This conference will now be recorded.
All right, welcome. So this particular webinar is going to be on bonds and ocean marine coverage. All right, so let's just jump in here. What is a bond? Bonds are contracts. They're not insurance. They're basically financial guarantees. To be honest with you, they're subrogation contracts. And subrogation is guaranteeing the results of a third party. That's a little bit much to just take in, guaranteeing the results of a third party. Insurance in general is a two-party contract between the insured, which is a client, and the insurance company. So it's a personal contract. So if you see personal contract on your test, that's what they're talking about, between the insured, the client, and the insurance company. So anyone other than those two is a third party. And so bonds are third-party contracts. So we'll get into the cast of characters in a little bit. But think of subrogation. So subrogation, someone without insurance loses control and drives through the living room of your house. You're going to sue them and you're going to win. But they don't have insurance and they have a part-time job which barely pays the bills. So when you sue them, the court awards them to pay you $50 a month. And $50 a month, it's going to take months and years to save up enough money from that payment in order to put a deposit on a contractor to rebuild your house. So, but if you have a homeowner's policy, one of the perils it covers is vehicles. Since a vehicle damaged your house, you're paying the deductible. The insurance company covers the cost to rebuild your house, and then the insurance company takes over the claim and goes after that responsible party, right? And so that's what. So we're guaranteeing the results of a third party. The insurance company pays you what you're legally entitled to, takes over the claim, and deals with it with the responsible party later on, which is great for you because you don't have to wait for those incoming payments to get your house built. The insurance company fronts the money and then goes after the responsible party to collect what they've advanced you. All right. The parties to the bond, we have the principal, which is the obligor. Sometimes you'll see it as obligor on the test. Kind of a funny terminology, but that's what it is. The principal is the entity or the party to a bond that has to do something. So always remember, the principal has to do something. The obligee is who the bond is protecting. All right, so always remember, it doesn't matter what type of bond you purchased. The bond is designed to protect the obligee. And of course, you're buying or paying premium to the insurance company for that bond. All right. So let's start off with the fidelity bond. Now, a lot of times the fidelity bond is sometimes called employee dishonesty coverage. Remember, not employee dishonesty insurance, employee dishonesty coverage. So here we have an owner of a jewelry store. Actually, I think I've got an Apple store here. So we have an owner of this particular Apple store, computer store, phone store, whatever you want to call it. And they have an employee. And the owner of this store wants to protect themselves in case the employee steals from them. And so as an owner, you're going to purchase a fidelity bond, right? In case your employee is dishonest. You're going to pay premium to the insurance company to set up this contract. So how this works is, again, the employer is the obligee. Remember, the bond is designed to protect them. The employee is the principal, and the principal has to do something. Remember, what they have to do is be honest. That's pretty simple. If the employee violates that and steals from the employer, then the insurance company, which is sometimes called the surety or guarantor, is actually going to pay the owner of this company whatever the employee stole from them. All right. So again, let me backtrack. The employee steals, let's say, $10,000 worth of product. The employer is going to fire them. And then they're going to file a claim on the bond. The insurance company is going to pay the owner the $10,000 that the employee stole from them, and then the insurance company will go after the principal and recover the money that they paid the owner, right? Plus interest and legal fees and everything like that. There should never be a loss to bonds because whatever the insurance company pays the owner, the obligee, they're going to collect from the dishonest employee or the principal. Right? Now remember, with a fidelity bond, the employer pays the premium. One more thing about fidelity bonds, it's actually, if you look at your commercial crime coverage, there are different coverage parts A, B, C, and D. And coverage A is actually a fidelity bond within the commercial crime program. So you may get a test question that says, which of the following covers employee dishonesty? And you're looking for fidelity bond, and it's not one of your answers. So then your next best guess would be commercial crime coverage, right? Because that would cover that also. Right. So now we're going to roll over to a surety bond. Again, bond is a three-party contract. We have the three parties. We have the homeowner, we have the contractor, and we have the insurance company. So let's say we have this homeowner that they want this construction. They're having a party in their backyard. I'm using this as an example. And so they need this contractor to build out this extension from the house to have a big party, including a pool here, right? And they have to complete it within 1 month for the party. The contractor says, I can guarantee I can finish the job in 1 month, right? And the homeowner basically says, well, how are you going to guarantee the work? And the contractor says, I will buy a surety bond, all right? So now the homeowner is the obligee. Remember, this bond is designed to protect the obligee, in this case the homeowner, by having it done. The contractor is the principal, and they have to do something. They have to build this backyard out for the party within 1 month. And so that the contractor is the principal, they have to fulfill an obligation. Now, in this case, since the contractor is guaranteeing their work, the principal pays the premium. Remember, the fidelity bond, the obligee pays the premium, but in a surety bond, the principal pays the premium. They're guaranteeing their work. So let's just say the contractor is not going to be able to complete the work within a 1 month period, right? The insurance company will actually pay the homeowner the money to hire someone else to complete the work within the time frame, and then the insurance company will go after the contractor to collect because they did not fulfill their obligation. They did not complete the job within the time period. Right? Again, there should never be a loss to bonds because whatever the insurance company pays the obligee, they're going to collect from the principal plus interest and legal fees. So that's kind of how the concepts are. So there's other types of bonds. There's bail bonds, faithful performance bonds, bid bonds. There's all kinds of bonds. Okay. So some more terms and contracts or concepts associated with that. The bond period is usually continuous. They really don't have an expiration date. You can terminate the bond. Advance notice, usually in writing, usually 15, sometimes 30 days in advance, we can cancel the bond. Now, if a loss occurs during the bond period, the discovery period is 1 year. That means after the bond is terminated or canceled, they still have up to 1 year to file a claim for something that happened during that bond period. Right? And with a bond, the limit of liability is, well, the amount of the loss up to the limits of the bond that you purchased. Every once in a while, you'll see like a blanket bond. I'm using employee dishonesty blanket bond. Where this may come in and play is we have a company and they have lots and lots and lots of employees, and they do have some turnover. I mean, the biggest one I could think of is probably a national company would be Walmart. Okay. So Walmart has so many employees at their locations. They can't possibly keep adding employees' names to the bond and then taking off those employees' names that they've terminated. And so what they do is they have an employee dishonesty blanket bond, which automatically covers all the employees at the location. Okay, and so basically, if an employee steals, they're terminated and they're then excluded from the bond. So the names will be excluded. But in general, there are no names to a blanket bond, except for those exclusions. So keep that in mind. You might get that blanket bond. All right, with that, we're going to flip over to ocean marine coverage. This covers ocean-going vessels, cargo ships, cruise lines, waterborne cargo. You might see that terminology. Ocean-going vessels, not the inland ones. That's a boat owner's policy. If it's a personal boat, personal watercraft that's ocean-going, that's yacht coverage, or a yacht policy. Right. So think of boat owners as lakes, rivers, maybe a bay. Ocean going would be a yacht policy if it's on the personal side, and then ocean marine would be commercial or business use of a boat. Okay. So for a yacht policy for ocean marine policy to be enforced, there's got to be implied warranties. Number one, the boat has to be seaworthy. It needs to float. The cargo has to be properly packed. So there's steps they have to take. They can only be transporting legal cargo. That's the legality piece of it. And when you do transport property, you have to actually lay in your route and present it to the insurance company. So you cannot deviate from that without notifying the insurance company that there's a change in the route of that particular voyage. The coverages you do need to be familiar with, we have hull, cargo, freight, and then protection and indemnity, which is basically the ocean marine liability coverage. So hull covers the ship itself. Anything bolted, welded, nailed, attached to that ship is covered under hull coverage. That includes the engine, the motor, and the gasoline, or sometimes you'll see fuel. Right? So gasoline or fuel would be covered under hull coverage. Cargo covers what you're transporting. And so you can see these crates, that would be the cargo that the ship is transporting. And that's a different type of coverage. It's not bolted to the ship. It is attached, but not really bolted, welded, or part of the ship permanently. Freight covers the shipping charges to transport that cargo. Freight coverage is like insuring a stamp when you send a package. So let's say you're sending a package through the post office and they offer you insurance and you buy the insurance. And then they lose the package. So not only did you lose the package, which is the cargo coverage, you lost the money that you had to pay to have the package sent. So freight would be like reimbursing the shipping charges or reimbursing the stamp you had to buy to send that package. Protection and indemnity is ocean marine liability, broken down in a couple sections. Number one, liability in case you hit something with the ship. This can be added to the hull. This can also be added to the cargo because the cargo could topple and injure someone or damage property. It includes medical for the passengers on the ship. And it also includes, in some cases, workers' compensation for the captain and crew. So protection and indemnity is kind of liability, medical, and workers' comp kind of rolled into one. Right. So those are the four coverages you need to be familiar with. When you're writing ocean marine coverage, there's cause of loss forms. We have named peril forms, which list the perils we cover, like wind, wave action, fire, lightning, pirates, believe it or not. There are some hostile waters. Your ocean marine coverage will not cover you because there are parts, like parts of the Caribbean, definitely off the coast of Somalia, and now parts of Mexico, which are hostile waters where we will not cover you. So there's an exclusion for that. So, man, there are pirates in the Caribbean still. That's crazy to me. All right. Some other named perils is jettison and barratry. Jettison is we're dumping cargo overboard to lighten the load so we can make it to port safely. That's jettison. All right, so let's say we're like this. Let's say this wasn't on fire here, but let's say we're weighted pretty heavily and we get caught in a mid-sized storm, and so we need to dump some of the cargo over, which raises the ship on the water so we can still make it to port safely. Because if we're sitting low in the water in a storm, then the big waves would basically, roll over and capsize the boat, and we'd suffer loss. So again, we're dumping cargo overboard to save the ship. That is a covered peril. Barratry is wrongful acts by the captain or crew without the ship owner's knowledge. All right, so this is part of that legality part. We can only transport legal cargo. But let's say the captain and crew, they're contracted to transport some Oriental rugs from one place to another, and they pull over, they dump off the Oriental rugs, and they pick up semi-automatic weapons. The legal cargo never makes the journey, but the ship owner is still held liable. This would be covered under the peril of barratry. Ocean marine can also be written as an all-risk coverage. So anytime you see all risk, pay attention to exclusions. War would not be covered. Strikes, which means, maybe the people that are striking for wages or benefits could damage a property. We're not going to cover that. Decay is another way of saying wear and tear is never covered by insurance. And then we have inherent vice, which is another way of saying wear and tear. All right? So inherent vice is something that has a tendency to self-destruct. So let's say we're contracted to transport a boatload of bananas from Brazil to the San Francisco Bay Area. And there's a huge storm off the coast of Brazil where the boat cannot leave the dock. When it leaves the dock, they still have to slightly reroute around the storm. And by the time that they land into the San Francisco Bay Area and they unload the crates, the bananas are spoiled. And so this would be excluded under the term inherent vice. Right? So fruits and vegetables have a tendency to spoil, right? And that will not be covered. Some other terms to know: general average. Whenever you see average in the ocean marine world, that means loss. So general average is where we're going to actually share the loss. Kind of like, can I borrow your car to transport some stuff? And if something happens, we're going to share the loss type of deal. Normally that doesn't happen, but I'm just using it as an example. So it's a shared loss. A particular average is where we're laying blame on somebody. It's your fault. Okay. And so you might see that, but remember, ocean marine, the key word is average, means a loss. Then we have the Inchmarine clause. This goes way back in time. There was actually a ship called the Inchmarine. And I typed it wrong there. I can see that. All right, so the Inchmarine, okay. We had a ship named the Inchmarine. The captain and crew were slightly negligent, and they suffered a loss. And the insurance company denied the claim based on negligence. And so it went to the tops of the maritime courts, and it basically got overturned. So even though the captain and crew were negligent, the insurance company must still pay for the claim. Now, this old maritime law clause that we're seeing right here actually affects us while driving your car. So if you're under the influence, or you're not paying attention to the roadway because you're playing on your phone and doing something else and you get into an accident, that's negligent operation of a vessel, and yet it's still covered by insurance. And so today, that type of situation started way back in the old maritime law section, okay? So there's some terms to be aware of. Again, I always want to ask people, register if you have not, consider it, all right? And at this point in time, let me stop the recording.